I was born in silence. No sound celebrated my birth. No voice called me by name, because I didn't have one yet. Only the cold. Only darkness enveloped me. I was forged in the solitude of a forgotten gas cloud, where everything was dust, ancient dust, made of memories of others who came before me. There, in the womb of a dormant nebula, chaos began to dance, and I was awakened. I began to spin. I began to heat up. I began to exist. I didn't know what I was, but I felt that something inside me wanted to shine. And then, like a spark in the darkness of infinity, I ignited. I was born small, fragile, unstable, but even so I shone. Not out of pride, not out of vanity, but because it was all I knew how to do, to shine. While the universe continued its impassive dance, I whispered my light into the void. And in that first breath of hydrogen transformed into heat, my story began. A story that no one told. A story that, perhaps, would never be heard. But that I lived until the last second. Alone. Among billions of stars that never noticed me. The first billions of years were like a long sigh. I grew up in a warm embrace of pressure and fusion, where atoms danced around me, joining together in a silent and precise choreography. Each hydrogen atom I swallowed transformed into something more. Something denser, brighter, stronger. I felt this power coursing through my veins of light. It was like a flame within me that never went out. I was young. I was strong. I illuminated the emptiness around me, guiding my own journey through the dark vastness. I had never known any place other than myself, but perhaps, just perhaps, I knew there was a purpose, a reason for my dance, a reason for me to burn. In my early years, there was nothing but fire, an immense fire that consumed me and at the same time nourished me. Each second was an eternity, each pulse an eternity. I was a jewel in the sky, and around me, small spheres of rock began to spin. These planets, were they my children? Or perhaps my siblings? I didn't know, but somehow they were a part of me. My light gave warmth and life to these small worlds. I warmed them, and perhaps, on one of them, something began to feel my presence. But I didn't know. I had never known if anyone saw me, if anyone felt me. I was alone, but still, shining. I was a star in its youth, in its strength, and for millennia, I danced on the stage of the universe. I was eternal, or at least I thought I was. I began to feel, without knowing exactly what it was, a subtle weakening in my core. The fire that was once constant now trembled. My hydrogen heart, which had always pulsed so strongly, could no longer keep the flame alive. The atoms that once danced at my command were now rebelling. They were tired, and so was I. My outer layers began to expand, searching for something that no longer existed. I was growing, but not as before. Not like the vibrant young star I had been. Each hydrogen atom that I fused now transformed into something heavier, denser, more unstable. I was creating elements I never imagined, and this new fire within me burned in a different way. It was no longer the fire that fueled me, but rather the weight of my own destiny. I knew the end was near, but still I refused to believe it. I began to tremble. I began to feel the emptiness pulling me. The pressures were increasing. The core of my being contracted, while the outer layers expanded. I was losing control. I was losing my essence. I was no longer the vibrant star of the past. I was dying. But before disappearing, I would shine with all my might, like a final, solitary dance. And then the end arrived. I could no longer avoid what was about to happen. I had been an immense star, full of light and heat. But now, All that brilliance seemed to disappear before the force of fate. What remained of me? My outer layers expanded in an explosion of light and colors, like a last desperate attempt to maintain my form. But everything fell apart. I exploded. A supernova. The last flame, the final burst of everything I was. I felt the heat of the entire universe concentrating on me. But I also felt the cold of oblivion. It was as if, at the same time, the universe welcomed me into its final embrace and released me into the eternal void. I was diluted, transformed into stardust. I went back to what I had always been, a piece of infinity. And as my light dispersed, I knew that somewhere, from this dust, a new star would be born. I would become something new, or perhaps something that would never remember me again. The explosion was my farewell. But the silence that came after, that's what remained. Now, silence is all that remains for me. I, who was light, am now shadow. But not a shadow of darkness. A shadow that carries the memory of brilliance. When I exploded, all that I was scattered through the cosmos. Each of my atoms now travels through the universe, touching other worlds, creating new possibilities, but at the same time also disappearing. I have been forgotten. I am memory in motion, a thread of scattered dust, without form and without name. But that's what we are, isn't it? Ephemeral beings in the grand scheme of the universe. To be born, to shine, to die, and then to transform into something we cannot yet understand. I lived my entire journey seeking meaning in the fire of my existence. But now, I see, the meaning lies in what remains after the explosion. In the new worlds that arise, in the stars that are born from my dust, in the atoms I left behind. Perhaps I was not the brightest star in the universe. Perhaps no one saw me. But my journey was not in vain. I lived to shine. And in dying, I left the universe a little more illuminated. And when the next star is born, when the next cosmic soul is forged in the silence of the eternal night, perhaps, somewhere, it will feel a little of me. In every spark of light it generates. Sometimes, in the silence of the deepest nights, when we look at the sky, we can see the stars. But do we see them, or do we see ourselves reflected in them? Each star that shines in the sky is a story of life and death. Stories that intertwine with the vastness of the cosmos, where there is no beginning and no end, but only infinite transformations. We, as human beings, may never understand what it is to be a star, but we can feel the same flame within us. Each one of us, in some way, carries the brilliance of a star in our soul. We seek meaning, disintegrating and being reborn in new forms, on new journeys. And just like the stars, we too are made of cosmic dust, of the same matter that gives rise to the universe. We are born, we shine, and eventually, we disappear. But upon disappearing, we are not truly absent. We become part of the infinite, part of what never dies. Our light, just like the light of the stars, continues to travel, touching others, illuminating the path for those who come after us. I was a star, and now I am the memory of a star. But my story doesn't end here. Because just as the cycle of life and death of stars never stops, the cycle of light and darkness, of birth and death, of creation and destruction, continues. And it will continue for all eternity. After all, in the universe, everything is a dance. An endless dance. A dance of lights and shadows, of life and death. And as long as there is a star in the sky, there will always be a story to tell.